Welcome back to Hardspace Shipbreaker. I'm ripping apart an atlas. You can watch my previous video if you want to see how I dealt with the nacells, which are one of the more interesting disassembly puzzles that I've run into in this game. I'm really excited about them, so go back and watch that video if you've missed it. I'll make sure that there's a card for that video. Maybe I'll even stick it in the description below. But now that I've dealt with the nacells, I'm left with the double-decker body of the ship, which I imagine has probably got its own challenges. Now, there's a few parts that are easy. I've already depressurized the central cabin. I did that in the last video, so I don't need the airlock anymore. I can rip apart bits of the airlock and not worry about it. So I'm just going to do that. No more switches for you. And yeah, because I've already depressurized it, you can see there's no green pressurized like markers in here. I don't have to worry about cutting stuff. What I have to worry about is damaging valuable things or struggling to get things out. Now, if I was playing in career mode, there would be a timer running all the time, and how quickly I got things out of here would be a major issue. I'm playing in free play mode now, which means I can take my time and figure out how this thing is assembled, so I can disassemble it in the most efficient possible way, and you know, and kind of learn how, because like there's these larger objects like this fuel tank right here, which technically I could probably get out this airlock, but it'd be a lot of fumbling, a lot of banging into things, and that's not something you really want to do with a fuel tank. So it feels like I need to disassemble this hull from the outside, maybe, so that I can make larger holes in the walls and get this stuff out. Ooh, what's this? Okay, this looks like a trap door. Is it controlled by this? Yes. Okay, cool. So here's the lower deck, and here's the reactor. Okay, so there's a couple things I need to be very careful about. If you're new to Hardspace Shipbreaker, I've got a cutting tool, which is very, very useful for pulling the ships apart, except if I fire it at this, that's a big problem. It will explode in flames. If I fire it at this, that's a big problem. And also, if I disconnect anything that is connected to the reactor and keeping it stable, that's a big problem, because the reactor will go unstable and then I will have to get it to the barge before it explodes. And so I have to be very, very careful what I do here. The thing is, I'm not actually sure what this thing is connected to, and I'm not sure how easy it is to figure it out. I've made limited use so far of the different vision modes, so I'm not certain if this is going to tell me anything. Probably not. So it could be that this is just a simple reactor, that I just, whenever I detach it from the wall, that's when it's going to go critical, and so I just need to make sure that I've found a way to open a larger hole in this hull before I take the reactor out. But it could also be that, like, if I'm cutting these things apart, like, for instance, there's a connector here that's connected to all these wires. Are these wires somehow involved in the reactor? And if I cut this connector, will the reactor start going critical? When it's a brand new ship I've never disassembled before, I can never quite be sure. Now, these down here, these look structural. So I'm going to feel fairly confident about cutting them. The main risk when you're cutting something that is structural is if you're in a pressurized space, breaking the seals on something can cause it to explosively decompress. Oh, cool. Okay, good. Yes. So this did break the seals. We were not pressurized, though, so everything's fine. And you can see the hull immediately start shifting, which means that I have detached something that can move. But it didn't shift that much, so something might be blocking it. If I can actually... Oh, what is this? Hold on. Another door. Okay, so I detached something that was part of the inner hull, but there's still an outer hull that I have to deal with, and that door was access to the outer hull. So let's cut every structural support that we can find in here. So you'll notice that the outer hull is made out of this complex nanocarbon material that I can't cut with my cutting torch. The inner hull, and you can tell the difference because not only does it say processor in text down below my crosshair, but my crosshair is gray. That means you can't cut this. The inner hull is made out of aluminum, which is a furnace material. It's a simple material. It's cheaper. You can throw it in the furnace if you want to, and you can cut it yourself. So once it's the right time, I can start arbitrarily cutting pieces out of this inner hull just to send them away. But I'm not ready to do that yet because you have to be very careful. Making big, broad cuts like that, you have to be very careful. You could accidentally cut something you don't intend to cut, and you can also be wasteful. When you're sort of cutting things arbitrarily, it's very easy to cut them in a way that makes it difficult to salvage everything you want to salvage. And so usually that's a last-ditch resort. Like, you try to do the prefabbed cuts first to make sure that you're grabbing all of the like coherent pieces that are easy to salvage. And then only when you get into like dire straits and your only option left is to make arbitrary cuts, that's when you make arbitrary cuts. So one thing I really like about the newer ships is that their airlocks are disassemblable. It used to be the airlock was actually one of the more frustrating parts of a ship to take apart because you had to cut it apart arbitrarily, and there was no way to do it perfectly. You always had to sort of have weird, ugly bits where you'd send a bit of nanocarbon into the furnace or a bit of aluminum into the processor. But the newer airlocks and the newer ships are all built to be disassembled. And so they're much easier to take apart, and they don't end up being one of the more frustrating parts of the ship. So yeah, so it looks like we've got this sort of inner framework that's holding the outer hull onto the inner hull. And if we can cut all of these, I'm betting the outer hull will come apart in chunks. That's a pretty common thing, common way for this to work. And once the outer hull comes apart in chunks, then I've got access to the inner hull, and I can start cutting large holes in the inner hull in order to make gaps that I can then use to remove objects from inside the hull. Things that are too big to take through the airlock, I can take through other means. And then, okay, so here... Oh, well, so the inner hull isn't airtight. Oh, that's unusual. Usually the inner hull is just a box floating inside the outer hull. So I'm not sure if these connectors here are integral to the reactor's stuff, so I don't want to mess with them. But it looks like I have cut enough of those inner joints that I can shift the outer hull, which is great. That means that things are coming apart. One of the things that's tough about disassembling an outer hull is there's usually, like, you're navigating a three-dimensional space with lots of just little cuttable bits all over the place, and it's really easy to just miss one cuttable bit and not know where it is. Like, look, I missed an entire wall full of cuttable bits. So yeah, so this part of the outer hull is not going to come loose until I've dealt with these guys. Was that the last one? Well, there's one easy way to check. Okay, no, this is... it's still attached down here. Is this the last one? Let's see. Oh, nope. There's some over here, too. So yeah, getting really efficient at taking a particular class of ship apart is kind of fun because there's just so many little details you have to remember. And so you feel like the road from familiarity to mastery still has a lot of steps along the way, which makes the game feel more replayable and also more satisfying when you really get stuff right. So let's... Oh wait, I got something jammed in the processor. Okay, hold on. I didn't realize that this nacelle had gotten jammed in the processor. Let's try to... Is it just stuck there? Okay, that's a problem. I wonder if I can, like, connect it to one of these anchor points out here. Or is it just jammed in there? Wow, I've never seen that before. Of course, this piece is larger than most pieces I've ever had to stick in the processor. Oh, good. Okay, so that piece of outer hull... Here, let's kill all of our tethers. That piece of outer hull knocked it loose. Okay, good. So I think we're all right now. Okay, so I've got these pieces that are meant to go on the barge. So let's take these off the outer hull before... I tried to send out the hull pieces. I was avoiding taking them off before in case there was some reason, like, they looked like they were electrical, and I was worried that if I removed them prematurely without having shut off the reactor, they might cause, like, electrical hazards, but it looks like they're okay, so I'll just take them off. I think we're good there. So yeah, let's send this into the processor. Okay, that is free floating. Let's send that to the processor, and I'm just examining their inner sides just to make sure I didn't leave something like a coolant tank on them. But I think they're all good. So the processor and the furnace, by the way, have like a little bit of like gravity to them. Like when something gets close, they get sucked in, which is good because it means that I don't actually need to like tether them directly to the inside, which is sometimes hard to reach from different angles. As long as I tether them to sort of the outer cuff, they'll get close enough that they'll start drifting in on their own. They do mess a little bit with sort of gravity and other physical elements in this game just to make it more playable. Things actually do... their inertia gets dampened a little bit. So you set something moving in a certain direction, and it does eventually slow down, even though that's not actually how it works in space, because you would just lose so many things if they didn't slow down. And so, you know, they're being nice. And I imagine, I mean, if they've got, you know, the kind of technology we're looking at here, where, you know, there's this mysterious attractive force going on with these, with the processor and the furnace. You know, the barge holds things in stasis. Like, if you can apparently mess with physics in this world as much as they are, I'm okay with forgiving the idea that maybe there's some kind of inertial dampening field that we're working in. That means that when you fling something too far in one direction, it will still, you know, slow down. Okay, so this large bit seems like, does this whole thing go in the processor? I think maybe it does. So let's send this big chunk into the processor. Let's look at it as it goes to make sure I'm right about that. Yeah, big old chunk goes in the processor. And I'm imagining maybe this one does too. Slide that baby off. Ooh, wait a minute. Okay, cool. It got jammed up on something. I was nervous for a second, but I think it's okay. The cockpit is still connected, though. The outer hull of the cockpit is connected, and I don't see any easy cuts for that. Cockpits, like early airlocks, are one of the frustrating ones. They tend to build cockpits in this sort of integrated way that makes it difficult to efficiently cut them apart. And so usually I save cockpits for last, because they're the ones that are kind of the most time-consuming and annoying to deal with. So I just wait until I have no other distractions. Okay, so now that we've got a huge gap in the inner hull, we can grab these larger objects and start just shoving them down into the barge. So one like tactic that I usually use to try to get things out of places is I'll link myself to them like this. I'll pull backwards with my thrusters, then I'll let go, and I'll slow myself down, but let the thing keep coming towards me. And then it gets close to me, and I can easily sort of grab it and manipulate it and send it in. You start getting really, over time, you start getting really, really comfortable with the controls of this game. And, oh, good, I can collect that now. And you start, like, navigating instinctually, almost without thinking about it, which is kind of fun. Okay, so we've got all of these bits now. They can go into the barge. But the most important bit is the reactor. So it looks like we've got, because we ended up rotating the hull, we don't have the clearest shot from the reactor into the barge, but I think we're clear enough. Let me go, I don't know what this thing is. A piston? Can I pick it up? Nope, I can't. Okay, so let's pull the reactor free. So you'll see, meltdown imminent. So let's just send it in there. So if I had disconnected that reactor while it was still trapped inside the ship, and I couldn't get it to the barge to deactivate it, I would have been in huge trouble. But luckily, I knew how a reactor worked from previous ships and was able to get it into the right place. But here's a power cell, which goes into the barge. But yeah, so if I hadn't known that I needed to open a huge gap in the hull before dealing with the reactor, that would have been trouble. But it looks like we're good.
Salvage deposit accepted. Credits transferred.
Kim Sabimsa agrees that they hate cockpits. Yeah, cockpits are the worst. So here's the power station. Put that away. And now that the reactor's out, I am way less paranoid about these cuts being bad. You still need to be careful with any cut that you're making. Especially because once the thing pops, you start cutting whatever's behind it. And so one reason I was very careful to remove the fuel tank before I started doing any arbitrary cuts was because it's very easy to point yourself at a cuttable bit and not realize there's a fuel tank behind it. And so you just cut a normal thing, and then suddenly you're exploding and you're on fire. So Jedi Cytrix, in reaction to me saying, that, talking about needing to be careful with the reactor, says, but those electrical storms are so fun. That is true. Like, once the reactor starts going real bad, it does make a bit of a pretty electrical storm, which is kind of neat. But, and like watching a reactor explosion isn't not fun. It's just, and actually, it would be more fun in free play when you're not really worried about how much money you're making. Like, in career, if you have a reactor explosion, what it does is it fragments all sorts of parts of the ship that used to be valuable. They now just become garbage, and you can't really make money on them anymore. And they're also become frustrating to put away because, if you cut a ship into big, large chunks, you can really efficiently put them away. When a ship is blown to smithereens, each smithereen is just as difficult to salvage as a large chunk of the ship, but they're so much less valuable. So it's way less efficient. Okay, so now I think all we've got left is there's a few objects in here, like this busted atmosphere regulator, which is why we had to explosively decompress the ship. Okay, so I still can't pull these guys. Oh wait, there's still little cut bits right here. They're more subtle than the bright yellow ones. Are there any more like that, or was that it? Ah, yes. Okay, so that wall of wiring is now free, but I think it's just made out of like copper or silver or something. So it's not fancy. It doesn't go in the barge. Doesn't go in the processor. It goes in the furnace. Is this our first time throwing anything in the furnace with this ship? I'm trying to remember now. It might be. Okay, I was going to say, was it just the two walls of wires? But no, we got these walls over here. So we'll cut these loose too. Oh yeah, have a nice drive, Jedi Cytrix. Okay, I think it was just the two cuts. Oh, there we go. Oh, interesting. There's kind of a... It feels like there's more to this one a little bit. Okay. I'm moving the entire ship when I grab this thing, but it's just entangled somehow. What is going on? Somehow these big pipes that it's connected to are like making it much harder to extract. Can it go out the side? Okay, so it looks like so the other wires came off the pipes, which go into the processor. Okay, so there must be a way to detach these guys from the pipes. Where are they connected? Because you don't want to send something that's like half furnace and half processor into the same space. But I don't see anything that would let me detach these two. It's weird. All the other wiring walls detached from their like structural pipey bits, but I'm not seeing a way to detach this one. I wonder if this is a bug. I wonder if these two things are bound together in a way that was unintentional. Well, so I am imagining that of the two, the processor is probably worth more. So I'm going to send this into the processor, but it is going to penalize me for having sent furnace stuff into the processor. Luckily, this is free play, and I don't care very much. But yeah, that might... I mean, maybe that's intentional. It feels a little bit like a bug, though, because all the other wiring walls worked a different way. Now, you can always take, like, posters and stuff off the walls and send them to the barge. You can also grab, like... yeah, pictures and there's all kinds of little light fixtures can go into the barge. Again, this thing says pick up, but I can't actually pick it up. It's often not worth it, though. Like, I remember I used to religiously grab every lighting fixture, like this, and send them to the barge. Now I often don't bother just because these are not worth very much. Unless I'm specifically being sent in to salvage lighting fixtures, I don't usually worry about it. So I somehow missed a wiring wall. Okay, we are getting closer and closer to the point where it's time to just start arbitrarily cutting apart furnace bits. But I feel like I saw... somewhere I saw a joint to cut that I had missed. Well, I mean, okay, there's definitely some joints to cut right here among these fuel lines. Now, if I tried to cut these while the fuel tank was still connected to them, these were full of fuel, and they would cause serious problems. But since removing that fuel tank was one of the first things I did, we're good. So let's processor this guy. Wait. Actually, let's just connect it to this and send this to the processor. Wait, is that the... oh, that's the front end of the cockpit. Oh. Huh. I thought it was attached. I thought we were going to have to cut, like, awkwardly cut apart the cockpit, but it looks like no. Its processor bit actually did come off. Okay, cool. I didn't realize that was the case. But I do feel like I saw something that was like a prefab cut joint, and I'm trying to remember where I saw it. Because I don't want to miss it. I don't want to like cut apart something arbitrarily that could be disassembled in a pre-planned way. I wish I'd done something about it the moment I saw it, because now I don't see it. Maybe I was just fooling myself. Maybe there was something that wasn't really what I thought it was. Like, maybe I was seeing one of these little, like, yellow floating things sitting, like, superimposing itself in front of the hull. Because, like, because we've got this, like, structural thing here that goes in the furnace. Oh, just more barge stuff. It's all full of barge stuff here. There's a pickup that I'm betting I can't pick up. Oh, there we go. No, I can pick this one up. Seems to be kind of hit or miss. Yeah, whatever it was that I thought I saw, I guess it must not be here. Was it something inside the cockpit? I don't think so. There is a bunch of crap inside this cockpit. Kind of don't want to... It's still complicated to get it out of the cockpit, though, so I'm going to leave it in there. Let's... I guess it's time to start cutting the inner hull off. Give it just one more once-over, see if I've missed anything, but I think I'm probably good. So, there's still a little... a few, like this. This thing goes in the processor. Does it detach? It doesn't detach. So I might either need to just awkwardly send it into the furnace or find some way to cut it off. Looks like most other parts of this go in there. Oh, this thing is an air filter that goes in the barge. Okay, so let's start with this air filter. Let's look at it from the other side, make sure we know what we're cutting. All right. Yeah, it looks like it's free on both sides. So what this wants us to do, you can see from the dotted lines, what this wants us to do is cut it loose from the furnace bits. Like that. I love this sort of like line tracing cutting mechanic. I don't use it very often because it's so dangerous, because you could accidentally cut something you don't want to cut, but it's really fun to line this up. So yeah, so you can't do it perfectly. Like this bit right here that wants to be in the barge has still got some furnace bits connected to it. But this is about as close as we can get. And actually, compared to early ships, this is actually really efficiently done. Like I feel like the development team has sort of figured out what is emotionally satisfying about playing this game. And part of it, like being able to efficiently, with minimal waste, send stuff into the right locations. It feels so good that the more that they can sort of provide us with a good way to do things, the more satisfied we're going to be. So even though it's good to have things that are difficult and complex to efficiently get rid of, they don't want to make them impossible. So I could remove this panel and put it in the furnace, but since everything else connected to it also goes in the furnace, and since, I don't know, the question is, I think this chunk is just too large to send into the furnace in a single piece. I would need to at least cut it along this axis in order to send it into the furnace. So what I think I'm going to do is, let's cut off the cockpit first, and then let's cut this whole thing in half. So let's make sure that everything that is just inside the cockpit, like this, that might want to be salvaged, is outside the cockpit. Like this computer, for instance, or monitor, or terminal, whatever this is. Let's take it off. Okay, so everything that is right along the edge of the cockpit is out. And then we're just going to cut this cockpit along the edge to remove it and separate it from the main double-decker hull. So cut this. We will cut this. We will... Hold on. Remove that. Where's the barge? Once I sometimes ignore light fixtures, but once I've got a light fixture, I have to put it away. And then here we go. So Kim Sabimsa is reminding me that I need to make sure to get all the posters. Is there actually a reason why I should care about the posters? Like, beyond just their value as, you know, barge salvageables? Is there anything special about them? So, trying to line things up like this, where you can cut multiple things at once, is kind of fun. Like right here, I'm pretty sure, that I cut multiple struts at the same time. So I think that I have now fully detached the cockpit. Is that true? Yeah, I think there's a gap all the way around. Yes. So I think the cockpit is still big and heavy enough that I have trouble moving it myself. But the thing that you always want to do with a cockpit, at least in my opinion, is point it so that its back, its open end is facing down. So I'm going to try... Oh, crap! Okay, it still thinks it's connected, and that is not what I meant to hit. Okay, it still thinks it's connected. Where is it connected? Okay, I'm seeing gaps all the way through. I've got no idea why it still thinks it's connected. Let's go inside and see if we can see anything that would make it... That's not how you get inside. Let's see if there's anything that can make it feel connected. I might have just found another bug. This is a brand new ship, so it's not crazy to think there might be bugs. Yeah, this might be like the wiring wall that was still connected. Like, there might be some magic that's connecting this cockpit to the main hull. And it could be that, yeah, just the cut I made is supposed to work, but didn't work. So, let's try again. Okay, I don't think there's anything. Let's just go one segment further down and cut it again and see what happens. So, again, I'm pretty sure that we're safe here. So let's do it like this. Cutting more of it at once. See, there's sort of a delicate way that to sort of use this UI to figure out how exactly something is going to be cut. Particularly if you want to cut multiple distinct objects, like these little corner struts. These corner supports are different objects from the panels of hull. Okay, so that got it free. So for some reason, this is still connected to the main hull. The cockpit is now free, which means I can try to connect the top of it to something up there and the bottom of it to something down there. Rotate it and then hit... Oh, stop. There we go. Look at that. It's mostly pointing downwards now, which is what you want with a cockpit, because cockpits tend to be full of garbage that goes to the barge. And, oh, someone's knocking at my door. Let me just check on this real quick. Hold on. Wow, okay. Well, apparently a tree fell into the road behind our house. And so my wife had to go and deal with that. That was, immensely dangerous. I'm glad it didn't fall into our yard or onto any cars or pedestrians. Now, that was kind of a long wait for folks who are watching me live. I'm going to try to cut that out so it's just an instant for people who are watching later on YouTube. Sorry to those of you who are watching live and needed to wait, but, sometimes you gotta sort of, deal with life things. Okay, so when I'm yanking on stuff inside this cockpit to pull them off, it also moves the cockpit. So let me do all the yanking first, and then we'll try to orient the cockpit in a direction that makes it easy to knock things into the barge. So let's sort of angle ourselves like this. There we go. Okay, I think this should be good. So let's pull the light off. Oh, wait, nope. I think pulling the light off just moved it a little bit more. Come on. Okay, light. Come on. Nudging it this way. Nudging it this way. So, Ranithcord asks, was the tree weighed down by the snow? So I think that was part of it. I think the snow has just, in my area, has just melted. But I think that the tree was already kind of in bad shape. It was kind of a dead tree. And so we were already thinking, like, my wife was already kind of planning to try to figure out if we could remove the tree. It's behind our property, but it's close enough that it kind of, poses a danger. We had contacted the city about other trees, and they had sort of removed other trees. With this particular one, they hadn't prioritized it, but it was my wife was correctly concerned that this tree also posed a danger, like the other ones they removed. And it turns out, reality endorsed my wife's instincts about that, and she turned out to be very right. But yeah, so I think that just between all of the sub-20s temperatures that we've been having for the past little while, freezing the tree, it being weighed down by snow at earlier points, I think it just sort of, there was a little bit of wind today. I think that it was pushed to its breaking point already by previous weather, and just something pushed it over the edge today, and it decided to collapse. So I'm glad it happened after school had started, because we have a school that's just like right down the street from our house, and kids walk down that street all the time. There's also power lines that it grazed on the way down that were like, my wife saw the power line sort of thwomping. Is that the word? I don't know. In reaction to the tree having hit them. But it didn't take any of them down. So it seems like everything's good. All the because one possible consequence was it causes a power outage at our house and the stream abruptly dies. So that didn't happen. So there's a lot of bad things that we avoided, which makes me grateful. All right, so I am running out of time. I actually have a meeting at 11 o'clock, and it is 10:50 right now. So we're going to try to get to the end of this disassembly kind of as fast as we can. So if I remember right, part of our goal was to cut this inner hull in two. So I'm going to do, at least initially, a bit of a haphazard job just to get a fast cut to happen. And then we might need to be more precise if I miss some parts. But a lot of the time, once you've removed a lot of the dangerous and complicated bits, you can go a little coarse with the way that you disassemble the last bits of it. And that's usually okay. It doesn't cost you much. Until you end up with like weird little points like this where like two cuts you made from different angles just don't quite line up, and then you start getting weird. Like, you can be much more careful with this than I'm being. Actually, one thing that I like to do when I am trying to be more precise, rather than doing these big wide cuts, sometimes what I'll do is I'll just destroy the these little connector bits. Like, I'll show you what I'll do. I'll do this. So if you toast any one object long enough, you'll destroy the entire object. Some objects are more resilient to that than others, and some of them would actually take so much time to cut that way. I think that was my meeting reminder. Some would take so much time to cut that way, you actually can't do it without overheating your cutter. But you can do it. I could technically eliminate an entire panel just by pointing my cutter at it for long enough. Like, I don't know what I'm cutting here. It took a very long time, but I did it. But it's wasteful. Sometimes you lose an entire object, which can cost you. My point right now, though, is all I want to do is just get these two parts to move separately from each other. And it looks like I've done that. It looks like this upper bit now is rotating separately from the lower bit. So let's make sure that's true. Let's connect it to the furnace, see how it moves. Yes. Okay, cool. So now in the process, I created a bunch of fragments. What the heck? Oh yeah, I made a very, very thin fragment by accident. So let's just send that in. Send that in there. A lot of the time, these smaller bits are just kind of not worth doing. And they also, like, they're easier to do right now because I've got unlimited tethers. Those little green connectors, those are things that are actually rationed to you. Like, you have to pay for them out of your paycheck in career mode. And so usually I don't use them this aggressively until I'm, until I've bought some upgrades that sort of make things more efficient. And, like, because for one thing, like, until you have upgraded your capacity for tethers, you have to actually go back to a central station to replenish them multiple times, which takes precious time. So I usually end up sort of manually firing things into the furnace like that, rather than tethering them in.
Raw material processed. Credits deposited.
In the main game. But because I'm in free play mode, I'm feeling a little bit, I'll take a little piece of garbage. Oh, that didn't work. Yeah, it looks like this little piece of garbage is too small for me to target. Oh, interesting. All right, so it's saying I haven't quite done enough to be completely finished. So there's all these little tiny fragments that I could, like, send into the barge.
Credits deposited.
It could be that there's just enough tiny fragments it's not ever gonna, like... You can see the bar along the top of the screen that says, when it gets into the red, that means I'm basically done. And I think that bar is actually more forgiving in career mode. I think in free play mode, it's just like basically you have to practically get every possible piece of the ship put away in order to fill that bar. And I think that I've got enough little random fragments here that I'm never really going to satisfyingly fill it up. So I might just need to declare victory at some point arbitrarily and just say, yeah, I'm done now. 'Cause I don't think I'm able to clean up enough little tiny bits to make this work. But there we go. There's an atlas put away. I really like this ship. It's like you saw, especially with the nacells in the previous episode, there's a lot of really interesting disassembly puzzles that it was fascinating for me to try to figure out what I could even do to get at the inner workings of those nacells and take them apart. And the sort of the double-decker shape of the inner of sort of the central hull was also really interesting because we've had larger ships where the whole point is to get out into the outer hull, and those had often had like really like obvious entrance points and things like that. these very tight spaces where just turning around, feels difficult. I mean, it's not really difficult because you're an orb in space, effectively, according to the physics system. But still, it feels like, just you enter an area and just looking at every wall takes attention and effort. And so finding all of the little routes from one deck to another, from one, from like one of the decks into the outer hull, it took some effort and some exploration. And so I think I actually really like the smaller ships that are intricate and weird more than I like the larger ships that are just huge and elaborate. Though I like them all, this Atlas is just a really good example of, I think, my ideal kind of ship to take apart in Hardspace Shipbreaker, because like it didn't take all day. We've been doing this for like an hour about. So it sounds like, and now, of course, now that I've learned how to do it, it would take me probably less than an hour to disassemble an Atlas. But yeah, that was really, really cool and satisfying. So nice work, Hardspace Shipbreaker team. They're just, it's fun watching this team have a great idea to start and then slowly keep refining it and getting better and better at their own game, better and better at sort of figuring out what's fun about a Hardspace Shipbreaker challenge and how to make them, how to lean into those lessons and make it better and better. So I think this team is doing great. They're building this game exactly how you should, and I'm really excited about it. So real quick, let me just catch up with the chat, make sure that I haven't missed anything important. Looks like people are talking about dairy. I'm not sure why. But yeah, it looks like I haven't missed anything that was critical to the stream. So since I've got 4 minutes until my next meeting, I guess it's probably a good time for me to wrap this up. So here's the subscribe button. I've made other Hardspace Shipbreaker videos before, so I'll probably put some links over here if you want to see more about this game. And yeah, we'll be back later on with more weird games for me to try out.